I'm sure more people will be coming in, but when I respect everyone's time, try to get started on moving through it. We want to discuss the airport issues and what we're working on to try to deal with the challenges that they have for our community, which we know are significant in terms of air pollution, noise pollution, all kinds of challenges going forward. I'm very pleased today to have all of us join together here. In particular, Hamdi, Mohamed, who's Port Commissioner. It's terrific to have Port Commissioners that we can work with. I, as have Eric and Tina, have been familiar with this issue for longer than either of us would like to admit. And certainly back in the 80s, it was not a very copacetic relationship between the port and the local community. And look, there are still challenges. The port has a job. Part of that job is to have a functioning operating airport that meets our flight needs. That's part of it. But I'd always felt that they could do a better job of interacting with our community and try to do that in a way that has the least negative impact possible on the community. And I really appreciate Hamdi being willing to dive in and have that conversation, as well as other port commissioners in the port leadership now, to try to work our way through those issues. Also, Tina and Karen have worked with ton of issues. They probably know as much about this as anybody from the work they've had in the legislature. So I just want to kick us off and talk about a couple of things that are going on the federal level briefly, and then turn it over to Hamdi and work our way through. We are reauthorizing the FAA this year in Congress, and that is an important opportunity to make some changes in how they approach things. And the initial draft of the bill was introduced by the House Transportation Committee this past week and contains some of the priorities that we put in there. Now, this is the first step in a very long process of getting through the House, through the Senate, and eventually signed into law. One thing, we were able to get the language in there to keep the North Sea-Tac Park permanent, basically. We'll have that set. Other big issues are trying to get after the air pollution problem. What exactly is the impact in communities right around the airport of having that fuel filtering down onto us on a day in and day out basis? So we have the study in there that we wanted to get done. The other big part of this, I mentioned the Port of Seattle's willingness to have these communications. We still have a major challenge where the FAA is concerned. They do not engage with us in any meaningful way and basically view their job as simply moving air travel around, and the communities are not part of their responsibility in their view. We are attempting to change that to achieve a greater balance. So there are several provisions in the bill requiring the FAA to engage in open dialogue and transparent dialogue with the communities around airports in this country. So we're going to keep pushing for that, both in the legislation and also here locally working with the FAA to try to get them to engage with us better. Last point, I think, is on the noise pollution aspect of it. To get more reliable studies and a better update in terms of giving people mitigation against the impact of noise in the community, and make the federal government more engaged in providing those mitigation efforts. So basically the federal piece. There's a lot of very individual specific pieces on that, but I will turn that over to our local leaders to talk about that issue, and specifically right now I'll turn it over to our Port Commissioner, Hamdi Mohamed, for her opening remarks.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Is that required? Can you guys hear me well? Okay, wonderful. I don't have good standing shoes either. It's such an honor to be here with all of you this morning. First, I just want to thank Congressman Adam Smith for his leadership, for being a strong advocate for airport communities for such a long time, and also using legislation to support many of our priorities, from the federal infrastructure bill to the Inflation Reduction Act to now the FAA reauthorization bill. There's so many wins, significant wins for our communities and all of those bills. And so I just want to give my gratitude to Congressman Smith. It is an honor to be here with you all as one of your Port of Seattle commissioners, and I am from this community. I live in Sea-Tac, and so a lot of the concerns that you all will share today when it comes to noise and emissions are personal for me. A lot of the frustration you all share, I have those same frustrations, and I ran for the Port Commission position in hopes to bring change for this community in particular. And that has been something I've been focused on. Today, I want to be able to share some of the work that the Port has been doing and some of the work that we are looking forward to tackling and what that work has looked like for me. I am relatively new to the commission. I've been on the commission for about a year and a half. And aircraft noise and emission has been around a lot longer than me. I haven't been always at the table to address those concerns. Right now at the airport, we are seeing a ramp in pre-pandemic levels. There's more customers coming through the airport. You guys have seen the videos where people are lining up all the way into the garage. We are at capacity at Sea-Tac, and so running that operation and overseeing it is a very challenging thing. And so security and safety has been a top priority for us. And I also want to say the community around the airport is also a top priority, and making sure that your concerns are front and center is really important. On the emission front, SEA has achieved 50% reduction for our port-owned emissions, and the port met its first major emission reduction goal at SEA to reduce greenhouse gas goals by 50%. That goal was initially set for 2030, and we've been able to do it now. And we've achieved that goal by purchasing renewable RNG, renewable natural gas, for our boilers. And so when you see the main terminal operations, the heating system, we're using RNG for that. And I share that because, that's some of the things we can do. We can set these really ambitious goals and take immediate actions to reach them. We're the first airport to be able to achieve that goal, and I want to be able to move in that pathway and set these really big goals. They're 2030, 2050, but there are some really immediate actions that we can take to making sure that we reach those goals immediately. The other thing that we've been pretty laser focused on is sustainable aviation fuels. The president and the federal government has set these really big goals for 2030 to reduce those emissions, the aviation sector emissions by 20% and to cut it completely by 2050. And so I see the port being able to play a role in that. We have to be able to invest in the fuel infrastructure, right? Making sure that we are welcoming that we create storage spaces for that, and that the port is being a partner to other government agencies. I participated in COP27 last year, and we did not only meet with international partners, but we also met with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Defense. And one of the things that, when I was at the table was saying that we're welcoming sustainable aviation fuels to our region. We want to be a partner, and we want to be able to lead the way. And that's one of the ways that we can show leadership as a port. This Tuesday, we will be, our Port Commission meeting will also include an aviation environmental study session. I recognize I don't have a lot of time today, so I encourage you all to participate and tune in so you guys can hear some of the additional stuff that we're doing. On the noise side, you guys all know about, I'm pretty sure, our noise program to reduce noise. And, that program isn't perfect, but we've been able to accomplish some good stuff. 9,400 homes have been installated. I recognize that there's still a lot of challenges with those homes, and with a number of homes, and Congressman Smith has a federal bill to help address that. And I also want to share that I have also been working on taking action. The port has launched its Part 150 study and land use study for SEA, and it's going to be conducting that. And one of the things that I've advocated for is 2 new approaches to address this issue specifically. I've made sure that the study includes an assessment of the extent in which previously installated home packages that are not working can be assessed so we know how big the scope of the problem is. And that is going to start this year. The port will be conducting a community outreach process, and there will be official channels for people to be able to report that. And I see that as an avenue for us as commissioners to be able to know what is happening, for the commission and the FAA to recognize the community members who are having issues with those sound installations, and for us to think outside of the box, right? We have access to the tax levy dollars. We should put it to the voters in King County to tell us where they would like to see us maybe make some of those investments. I've said for our region to be better off, South King County has to do well. When South King County is doing well, the rest of the region is doing well. And our port operations here supports the entire region, and I definitely do think that is something that we should consider. And so I'm looking forward to being able to see what comes out of that assessment. In addition, using an equity lens is really important when it comes to talking about sound installation and doing second installations, making sure that who do we prioritize? The need is so great. Is it our seniors? Is it our veterans? Is it people who are low income? And so that's another thing that I will be looking at. From an operational standpoint, we have also, that's another tool that we've been using is it's voluntary programs, right? We don't have regulatory authority to tell the airlines exactly what to do, but there is the program of runway use agreement with the FAA, and basically that third runway is the runway that is closest to the community. Many of you have shared with me your stories about the time where I wasn't around, and you all did a lot of advocacy for the third runway, and I hear those stories all the time, and so I specifically appreciate this voluntary runway agreement, because what it does is between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. that third planes are not supposed to land on that runway unless there's an emergency and so forth. And I've looked at the reports, I've pulled the data, and what it shows even just from this year is that we went from an average of 12 planes landing on that runway to this year, one plane landing at night, at those late night hours. And so that is a significant change, and I hope to see more changes like that. And the other thing that I will share is in the 2023 budget, one of the things that I advocated for is preconditioned air for the planes. So when these planes land and they're loading and unloading, one of the things that they use, the engine is still running. And so we have the preconditioned air allows those planes to plug into our ventilating systems and making sure that it's just clean and they're not running that engine up. And so these are our soft powers, is what I call them, ways for us to be able to encourage, set the space and the infrastructure to get on the same page and get on the same page of our environmental priorities. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to continue to do that. I have a lot to share. I say come to the commission meetings. I'm happy to answer questions today. But since I've been on the commission, the one thing I will say is the most challenging part about being a port commissioner is we are a special purpose government, and there are actions that I would love to immediately take. I would love to, be able to have influence on telling what time these planes land and what type of engines that they should have and how they should, conduct their business. But that is outside of our authority. It falls under the FAA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and so for us, that is a challenge, and it is one that it's a challenge I move into. I've been honored to be in this elected position, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And I want to use my time on the commission well by serving you all and being able to deliver on a number of you guys' needs. Again, thank you for this time, and I'm happy to answer questions today.
Good morning. Okay, can you hear me? Well, it's an honor to be here this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. I haven't been in Mount Rainier for a while. My kids both graduated here. It's fun to be back. I want to start with some thank yous. Congressman Andrew Smith, we're really fortunate to have you representing us, and you take and know these issues at a very personal level. I was in Boston this week, and where's Debbie? We teamed up with Boston. Logan is an airport community, and we've done some forums with them, and we were talking about Congress, and he let me know that you're one of their champions too. You're a champion for all airport communities. You know, when my son was young, he went to Mar Vista Elementary School, and he used to come home with a lot of asthma, and I kept thinking, does that school have black mold? Now, it wasn't until years later that I thought about, well, he was out in recess, and was he breathing all the pollution from planes? We have very high rates of asthma in our community, and you know, one of the first things that really kind of drew me into this conversation a number of years ago were two community advocates, Stewart and Rose, who said, we have high rates of asthma. Did you know UW was looking at airport communities? In fact, they had looked at LAX and Atlanta. And so, you know, I felt really fortunate that the community came forward and really was a catalyst for so much of the work we're going to talk about today. Hamdi, I want to thank you. We're so excited you're on the Port Commission, and I know in your heart this is so important to you, and you love the community so much. So I want to say thank you. I also want to thank my partner, Senator Keiser. She's been doing this many more years than I have, and she's an absolute champion. So some of the things that happen, you know, after anything, I call it the trifecta for change. And for me, it's a combination of community leaders, and we have a lot of community leaders working on airport issues that know a whole lot about this issue. And it's about government really stepping up. Our cities, our county, our state, our federal partners are really coming together, our school districts. And it's about, I think it's about research as well, because the information's powerful. How many people saw Chris Johnson present recently? So one of the things we were able to do was to, in addition to having the footprint and looking at ultrafine particles, was the state was able to step in and fund the Department of Health to start looking at the health disparities in airport communities. And that really, I think it really shifted a conversation in Libya to what's the health impact. Before it's like noise. Well, you're living by an airport, it's noisy. Now it's what's the health impacts of noise? What's the health impacts of air quality? One of the things that we were inspired by Boston was really to go into the schools. So UW started looking at indoor air quality in our schools. And we were able to partner with the school districts to really start bringing in air purifiers, which are actually highly effective at reducing the amount of ultrafine particles. In fact, it can take it down to about 80%. And I don't know if there's anyone here from Highline School District. I would say thank you because you took it to the next level. You used your federal dollars to put those purifiers in all the classrooms. So a big thank you to Highline School District. One of the things we worked on this year is actually around asthma and helping families that have kids with asthma. And we'll be having UW and the Department of Health have a medical intervention team that can go into the houses. It can look at the air purifiers. It can look at HEPA vacuums and other things, as well as more monitoring. We're able to get additional dollars to be able to actually not only have your standard EPA monitoring in this area, but to include all the kind of particles. I know there's a lot of work ahead, but I really believe as we partner, we're going to see real change. And I appreciate all the advocates in this room. And I think, again, partnering with our cities, our county, our port commission, and the federal level, we can really make a difference. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
I'm stepping on my floor here. Well, good morning. I'm Senator Keiser, and it's so nice to see all of these familiar faces in person because we have been so isolated for so long. So we're back together again. We can have this conversation. I want to hear from you, but I'll just tell you a couple of things beyond what you've already heard from our wonderful representatives and commissioners here. And I do have to give a shout out to Hamdi for being a lean-in commissioner, working so hard to affect change at the Port of Seattle Commission. And those of us who've been around for a while, like Adam, that commission was a stone wall for 20 years. And we have people on there that listen and act. So that's an improvement. And I have to give a shout out to Adam for getting into the FAA reauthorization right up the North Sea-Tac Park. And that's fantastic. The ultra-fine particle funding, that's the air pollution issue that we've been so concerned about. So those are, and there's many other good things in that FAA reauthorization that Adam will be defending over the next 12 months, so please back him up on that. From Olympia, two things. We have done some innovative work on sustainable aviation fuels, which is a kind of biofuel for jets. Alaska Airlines has also worked with us on making sure that sustainable aviation fuels are not only safe but also efficient. I'm not totally convinced yet about the health effects because it's still combustion, right? But it isn't a fossil fuel that's being burned. It's a biofuel. The sustainable aviation fuel for jets is something that I think our state will lead on, and we will be able to really impact, but this is a industry-wide issue. It isn't only for Sea-Tac. You know, we can affect the jets that take off with sustainable aviation fuel, but the jets coming in, we don't have control over their fuels. But hopefully they'll refuel on sustainable aviation fuel when they get here. So that's one kind of infrastructure piece that we have been able to enable through state legislation and funding. So that's one piece that will improve our air quality, I believe, over the next few years. The other piece, and this is the long-range thinking piece, we're not doing so well with. Yesterday was the final meeting of the Commercial Aviation Commission that I helped to get up and running 4 years ago. Is Steve Edmondson here? I can't see. Hi, Steve. Steve is the voting member on that commission. Yesterday was our final meeting. And Steve could speak to where we're at. I would say it ended not with a bang, but with a whimper. And sadly, the report will go out that will only include the survey of all of the commission members on what they think the future should be. I will say that all but 2 of the commissioners said they thought the only future for commercial aviation that would be 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road would be to develop another greenfield site. That's the only practical way because none of the municipal airports, and we've surveyed all of them, in Western Washington want to become a full commercial airport. So that's kind of the facts as they stand. There was another work group established in legislation, but the governor vetoed the guts out of the bill. So it really doesn't have any impact because all of the tasks and all of the deliverables that the work group was supposed to do are gone from the bill, and all we have is a shell of 19 people appointed to talk and do nothing. So, as I said, it's not as encouraging as it should be because we do have a major problem for the whole region coming at us. As Hamdi said, Sea-Tac is at capacity now. By 2030, we will be beyond capacity. 2030. You can't build an airport in less than 30 years. You know, by 2050, we're going to be stressed, majorly stressed. And I don't want 24/7 air operations out of Sea-Tac. That's just not allowed. So there we go. That's where we're at.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, how are we handling questions here?
We'll have them right over here.
Okay.
Line up.
Because-
Okay. We have a microphone. I would say as we're getting our if you have a question, please raise your hand with the microphone to you. All right. I think the sustainable aviation piece, the other piece of that basically, now, you're not going to send an electric airplane from here to London or from here to New York, but a surprisingly large number of our flights are within 300 miles of Sea-Tac Airport. And there is some investments being made in planes that could potentially give us the ability to do those through an electric flight. So one of the big things I'm trying to do at the federal level, I don't know what the answer is here, make the investments to go out and find those answers. Hydrogen is another potential source of fuel to power this being flooded in natural gas. But if you make the investments in developing these technologies, that gives us the best opportunity. So, first question. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, because I was just going to say I dream of the day that airplanes have electric engines. And thank you, Commissioner, for mentioning also about the use of the third runway, because that's another thing that's been even reported in the Seattle Times. I have a question for you. I know that you said that you have no control over what the airlines do. We have noticed in Des Moines, especially the south end, that Delta Airlines has been lowering wheels over us. It even sets off my ring alarm. That's how loud it is. It drops, when they do that, it drops gear oil on our furniture, our soil, our water, everything. So we would really appreciate someone in office to contact the CEO of Delta. I tried emailing him on May 25th, and I never received a reply from him. So it's like hitting a wall without getting any answers. I even wrote an email to Delta. I received a reply. I got a case number, and still, that's it.
Well, first of all, thank you for your question and comments. We have a sound installation department program and team who looks at all of the complaints or the issues that constituents sent in. In fact, Representative Tina and Senator Keiser sometimes elevate some of the concerns that you all are having, and what I end up doing is I reach out to that team and we try to get to the bottom of what that issue may be. And so I don't know if you've reached out directly to our team. Pete Mills is my strategic advisor. He's standing right behind you. Pete, please give her a card. Send us an email, and I will follow up with you directly.
So good morning. First of all, I just want to thank you all for being here today. So my name is Ann Miller, and I'm a former school teacher. I'm a mother. I'm a person of faith, and I am deeply concerned about the welfare of our children. And, there's been studies you all know from King County Department of Health and also Seattle Public Health that show that people living close to the airport live sicker and die younger than people further away. And that we need to, one of the things that they recommend is to preserve our remaining tree canopy in that area. So first of all, thank you for making sure that we're going to protect North Sea-Tac Park. But I would say that in addition to that, we need to look at the surrounding tree canopy in the area, which is currently being, some of it cut down for airport uses. So that makes me sad, and it makes me nervous for our children. And I just want to know what we can do to try and protect our kids. So thank you.
I would like to let you know that I had a conversation with your other commissioner who's on the same wavelength, Frank Ellerman. And he's very interested in redirecting some of the funds from, I think they're called Smart Travelers or something, into tree restoration in our district, in the airport communities. Now, this is something that may be able to be developed at the commission level, and he's going to be proactive on that. I just wanted you to know that.
So I'm concerned that restoration is not the same as preserving what's there. When you cut down trees and plant small trees, it's not the same. So,
That one, I want to recognize Chris Johnson, who's here, as soon as I see you. Thank you for your work. And we are working closely, they're part of that trifecta, and so we are looking at the additional things we can do to support the community, and the health concerns are staggering. Lifespan, asthma, there's also new studies out around preterm labor that we're looking at. So it's a number of health conditions, and so again, looking at how do we impact that. So thank you for that question.
Hi, my name's Merle. I'm with 350 Seattle. I'm not speaking on their behalf, but we also are with the group Stay Grounded. We believe that if we do get to the expansion point, or that is at capacity, that we should stay at that capacity, that we should not expand. We should leave those, what is it, 27 million people who will have to find another way to go by 2050. That you guys should be empowered to provide for that, let's call it externality or an unintended consequence of big business. But the thing I have is a sort of a second question that kind of blends into a aviation summit that was put on by the UW, where I asked Karen Keiser a question about this, but maybe before that I could ask Steve, why were you not, I think one of your criteria for your location was something within 100 miles of our hub here. And Yakima is 100 miles, exactly 100 miles. And it has a council that's totally in favor of it. Do you guys know about that? And also, they conducted a poll for voters to weigh in on, and they said they were 83% in favor. So my last question is since you guys can't, or any officials in 6 counties here, which are within 100 miles, can't come up with a solution like that, and you're at loggerheads with even your public here, why not put a referendum onto the ballot saying we don't go beyond the expansion of Sea-Tac, or we go to Yakima and move all of our incoming and outgoing flights, half of them, over to there, fed by, I think it's Hodgkins who came up with a possible solution, which is that we would employ the electric planes that we have being built. There's 4 billion ordered in Arlington right now by a company called Aviation, and they've flown the first drawing board aircraft that's totally electric. And then he suggested getting the 30-seaters from Hart, which is a company that has a hybrid version, which is if the electric doesn't work, you could blend into a gasoline version. But anyway, 3 questions, I guess, maybe not.
Well, I'll start out. So Yakima came to see us, and they were in my office. In fact, we started talking about this whole idea of electric, and could they be a hub of these smaller airports that could go electric? Because we're probably going to see that with the smaller planes before the larger. So I think Yakima is still in discussion, and I don't know about the idea of a referendum. I was able to get into that bill that got gutted in the intent section for the state to acknowledge that we're at capacity at Sea-Tac. Because we need the state to acknowledge that, so we're under no more pressure, right? That the solutions are elsewhere. I don't know if you want to address the referendum.
Well, I understand the idea of a referendum. Obviously, we're all politicians up here. But I also think it would be, this is sort of radical, but I also think it would be fair to give preference to King County residents, because King County residents pay property taxes to the Port of Seattle. People in Thurston County don't, so maybe Thurston County people should go to Portland if they need to go to Florida or New York. So it's just a thought that maybe we do find some way to, if we only have Sea-Tac as our one international and commercial airport, to restrict who gets to use it to the point that it is not going to be a safety hazard. You know, when you get over capacity, you are putting people's lives in danger, not just their health.
support a referendum of that sort? The other two?
I mean, to be perfectly honest, we'd have to look into the legality of that. I don't know that such a referendum, I don't know who has control over that. I don't know if people in the state of Washington, would you do it statewide? Would you do it in the county? Would you do it, as Karen just pointed out, the county pays the taxes to the port. Should people in Kitsap and Princeton be able to vote on that? You'd have to figure out who your electorate is before you could go for the referendum on that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, right now we're paying $2 for the fuel, for the green fuel that the airlines are only going to pay $1. So, proportionality and equity.
Good morning. Thank you for having this town hall. My name is Ursula Wheeler. I am from Thurston County. Thank you. I am an observer of the CAC for the last 3 years. And I have to speak as here, even though this is all of your meeting, not mine directly. I do want to thank for the attention that is given to the reorganization of the FAA. I also hear already a lot of misinformation this morning, and that really is concerning. We do need to start talking about facts, otherwise we can't find solutions. One of the facts that I have learned over the last 3 years from the FAA officially at a stakeholder meeting for Sea-Tac, which is a public meeting, that sustainable aviation fuels at the tailpipe have the same CO, and the scientist there speaking spoke of CO2 only, so I can only speak to that. But at the tailpipe, sustainable aviation fuels have the same CO2 emissions as any other fossil-based fuel today. So let's be very careful to get the facts. Yes, the net zero they're claiming happens at the production level, but it does not help the airport communities. Also, what that fuel is made with makes a big difference, because there could potentially be even different and even more dangerous pollutants being distributed. So I don't see sustainable aviation fuels as a solution at this time. There might be other fuels in the future, but as long as we are flying with combustion engines, that is burning something, and that is creating pollution where it burns. The other part I really would like to question, actually I already brought it up, the FAA as captured regulator. The FAA has been run by airlines and by ports for the last 50 years. I mean, look at who the administrators were. You can go on Wikipedia. I did it the other day. That explains why the stakeholders here get treated so poorly by the airport and by the FAA. Why not start, and this was suggested many years ago, break the FAA apart? The FAA is not representing people, it is representing the industry. And just briefly, and then I'll turn it over, the capacity forecasts are just that. They are forecasts, they are wishes. This has nothing to do with Washingtonians wanting to fly. Washington's growth rate right now by OFM, the Office of Financial Management, is less than 1% for the next 40 years per year. So the flying at the 27 capacity shortfall of million passengers is not people flying here from Washington and for economic benefit and flying for Washingtonians. It is for other economic growth. And that's what we need to get at and study and perhaps talk some more of what the goals are. I would also like for the newspapers who might be here today to please state facts, check your facts. Do not just repeat what elected officials know and say that is only part of the truth. Thank you.
the FAA is absolutely correct. Their mandate basically is to facilitate airline travel. And we have worked to try and change that mandate so that part of it also the communities that pay tax. And that's one of the cornerstones of what we're trying to do. Because the FAA doesn't care about us because legally they're not required to care about us. And we want to change that. So I think that's the next
Good morning, my name is Julie. Thank all of you for being here and taking on the concern that we all have about the airport. One thing I want to clarify, you went over there said something about Delta. Were you talking about the screeching noise that is specific in Delta? Okay, yeah, it's horrific, it's shocking. And who do we call? I've not called to complain, because I don't know where to call to complain, to say anything, to be, you know, if they say, oh, only 2 people, we only hear about from 2 people. I will do more people if I know where to contact.
So if you go on the port's website, and I'm happy to give you a card, we're happy to talk to you directly, but we have a sound installation program. There's a coordinator in that office who responds to the complaints and looks into it and gives you a direct response. And so I'm happy to look into that for you as well, and better understand what it is that you guys are hearing.
The other thing I'd offer, maybe Senator Keiser wants to join us, we can also reach out and directly with your concerns and ask Delta to respond.
Okay, thank you, because it's only Delta and it's a terrible noise. My other thing I want to talk about is, yes, we all live by an airport, and people might say, well, you chose to live by an airport, so what are you complaining about? In the 10 years that I've lived in this area, the airport traffic has gone up, I won't quite say exponentially, but beyond significant. It's, like you said, the airport's at capacity. So don't blame me, I live by an airport, when Sea-Tac and the Port of Seattle seem to be pretty greedy and wants to keep it to themselves. I was totally dismayed that the newspaper said, you know, Governor throws up his hands about the commission about finding some other site for the airport. Unacceptable. Everyone uses that airport. Amen. And it's not just the airplane traffic, but how congested is it just even getting in and out of the airport to drop you off, to pick you up? So the time involved to fly an airplane, it's almost like you may as well get in your car and drive. So this NIMBY, not in my backyard, is beyond upsetting to me, because everyone has to deal with it. They don't want the airport in their backyard. They're still having to put up with the traffic getting in and out of the airport of their time and aggravation, although we deal with the pollution of those cars idling there. I don't understand with all the significant airports in this region, why they can't be made commercial. I know that up in Bellingham, they gave it a try, but COVID put a kibosh in that, but is that program back up? Boeing Field can handle big planes, Renton Field can handle big planes, McCord can handle big planes. There are so many airports within King County, so we don't have to stand and say, no, only King County people can fly in King County. Send them to develop these other airports. It doesn't take 30 years, they're already there. Who's going after that? No one wants it in their backyard, but everyone has to share the load of it, the noise, the pollution, and the traffic.
Very well said, thank you. And part of the CAC, and I don't know if Steve can speak or not, was not only the Greenfield site, was expanding current airports. And I do think that both need to happen, not just one or the other. It really is both. And
I would add, we will be expanding at Plainfield. We were able to open up Plainfield to commercial aviation in the last 5 years. It is working there, and they are going to be adding. But they only have capacity for about 6, maybe 9 more gates at the most. That's not enough to take the overflow capacity that we've got at Sea-Tac. But it's better than nothing. I'm going to push to make sure they get full expansion at Plainfield.
Hi there. Appreciate all of you. The rest are dead. Everybody I worked with in the 90s against the third runway, they're gone. You know, pretty much. There's a few people around, but just want to make this brief. We have a healthcare crisis in our community. The death rate is the same as the pandemic. And that was considered a global emergency. So my question is the National Academies of Medicine has been asked, well, Representative Lynch has put a bill forward each session now for 3 years to get the National Academies of Medicine to look at what we're not looking at is the cumulative impact of the noise and the emissions at the same time. So our death rates are way too high. Our illness rates are all causes of deaths from disease. It is off the charts. So we need to address this. We need to put a moratorium on expansion. We need to find a safe level of operations that do not harm public health. If airports and communities are going to be located together, we need to push that forward. And the only thing Congress is really going to respond to, Senator, is most likely the National Academies of Medicine to start writing the laws to tighten this up. What is your thoughts on that? And can you support that bill?
Yeah, and that's one of the things we do in the FAA bill, is to get that analysis of the impact. Well, there's been quite a bit of analysis on noise pollution. There's been very limited analysis on air pollution, both of which are severe. So yes, that is part of the goal of the FAA reauthorization, is to get the National Academies of Sciences who understand this stuff to study it and really talk about the impact and get it down on paper so we can begin to have public understanding of what is happening. Yeah, that has been one of several pillars of what we're trying to do to get a focus on airport communities. Yes.
Debbie, I would also say there's more to this, and there is a lawsuit that's been filed by the Berman firm on behalf of a group of Sea-Tac citizens that are going after this issue of disparate health impacts. And what we need to talk about is the changing law we have in our state with environmental justice standards now. So there are ways to move forward, I believe, not only in legislation and in Congress and in budgets and so forth, but also in the courts.
Can I just ask one?
How many of you consider it a public health emergency here?
I mean, like, it's without question a public health hazard. There's no question about that.
Emergency, like the pandemic.
Yeah, we have to define
Same rate
what
of death.
emergency means. But yeah, it's without, if you get into that, bottom line, it's a big problem we gotta go after. You can define it however you want to define it. It's not something we should be ignoring.
And Hamdi, you talked about the benefits. Each life year lost is worth $10 million. Each airport is producing about $40 million worth of losses on healthcare costs due to noise. You start adding these up, these externalized costs that the community has been bearing for the benefit of the elites for so long, it's going to be outrageous. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Noemi Maxwell, and I want to thank all of you sitting there in the panel for your distinguished and dedicated public service. You've been champions for us here in the New York Airport community. I want to honor what Debbie Wagner just said, and what many people before me said. I believe this is a public health emergency. The premise of my question is based around what I have on the sign here: trees save lives. We have, I want to first, this is news to me, Representative Smith, and it's fantastic that you put it in the reauthorization, FAA reauthorization for North Sea-Tac Park to be permanently preserved. That is just, I just want to applaud you for that. Thank you. I do want to say, in addition to that, there are another 70 to 80 acres of trees estimated that is open green space that was, that people thought were going to be open green space when that area was vacated, the homes were vacated out of there. And those trees are slated for replacement, more polluting airport structures to go in there. And a lot of it won't be just flying, it'll be cargo warehouses, which we're running out of space for. So we're looking at losing, under the Sustainable Airport Master Plan, losing dozens of acres of trees that save lives around the airport. And so I would ask, what can we do? So far it doesn't seem on the radar. North Sea-Tac Park is on the radar, and that is beyond beautiful and wonderful. And I can't even go into how great that is, but there are all these other acres of trees in this highly this very highly populated urban area where the trees are like giant feather dusters sticking up in the air, catching that bad pollution that's killing people. Babies are being born prematurely and underweight. Children are having learning problems, and the trees are catching this. We want to replace those trees with more polluting sources. A lot of them will be warehouses, probably roads, that type of thing. What can we do about that? How can we get a focus on the whole picture, the interconnected forest that protects our wetlands and streams and all people living here in this area? Thank you so much.
You know, Amy, we've walked around Sea-Tac Park together, and you all have heard me say that preserving that park was a priority. We had a common goal. There was a number of different pathways and approaches that we could have taken to help preserve that park, and it was an honor to be able to partner with Congressman Smith and his team. Our teams really did come together and put their heads together to look at federal strategies. We looked at state strategies, port strategies, local cities we were talking to. City of Sea-Tac was among those cities that we talked to. And so I'm glad that we were able to see North Sea-Tac as part of it, as in the federal aviation reauthorization bill. So that's wonderful. I think to your question about the bigger sort of strategy, we have to come together again and talk about that and have a strategic plan around that. And I welcome those discussions and conversations, and the port needs to play a role in that. And so I welcome your thinking around that, and I do recognize that the trees do protect the health of our community. I've said that from the dais at the port, and I believe that, and I think we can come up with a good strategy to be able to support the port's operations as well as protecting the community needs.
Hey, yes, hello. Daryl Jones here from Kent, and I've got a question regarding air and noise pollution. Because when you hear talks of air and noise pollution, you also hear the term equity tossed about. And so I'd like to ask you, Representative Smith, what is your definition of the term equity?
Look, we really have time for that sort of broad philosophical debate here. I can tell you it's pretty simple and straightforward. We strive towards greater equality and greater opportunity for everybody all the time. And part of the way you do that is you identify the people who don't have as much. And you try to figure out how can we help them. I don't think there's any one perfect definition, number one. Number two, you are not going to achieve perfect equality. You're just not, ever, okay? Truth of the matter is there's all kinds of inequalities out there. You have to work towards greater equality. And for me, like I said, one of my big focuses on who are the people who aren't being included? Who are the people whose voices aren't being heard? Who are the people who are not doing as well economically or suffering more? And a lot of that is informed by the fact that I grew up in South King County. I grew up in Sea-Tac, High School, not Rainier, but same general neighborhood. And when I grew up, we used to think, South King County was where all the disfavored land uses got dumped because it was the poorer communities. We had 2 dumps in an airport. Literally, they closed the dumps, but they're still there spewing off methane. So I'm very focused on how can we create greater economic opportunity. I will say this and I'll get in trouble for that. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about making it perfect. Okay, I don't spend a lot of time, coming up with new fancy little definitions for this is a public right or that's a public right. We got to put the definition. I spend a lot of time focusing on how can we make progress. How can we create more economic opportunity? How can we protect people who are suffering? And in this case, people who are suffering from air and noise pollution. That's my focus. It's not that I'm opposed to broad philosophical debates. I have them every once in a while after a couple beers with my friends. But when it comes to working, what can we do to make it better? Right here, right now, what we can do to make it better is we can work on the noise pollution, work on the air pollution, and work on reducing what is generated, whether through what Hamdi described about limiting the flights in certain different times, or we can come up with a better way to burn them. Take the woman's point about you can't just assume because it's a different fuel that it's going to be better. Do the studies, get the analysis, know what you're dealing with, so that you can figure out a better way to do it. I do know that if we have electric planes flying even those short routes, that's a huge benefit. I could go on, but that's basically the way I try to analyze the problem. to get to greater equity. It means greater equality, greater opportunity for everybody. That's what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Just transition is another thing that Congressman Adam Smith often talks about when he talks about equity, and I've seen your equity work in action, right, and throughout our entire county, but making sure that the communities who are most impacted as we're transitioning, we think about workers, that we also center those voices, and so I don't want that piece to also be missed, and that is something I've heard you talk about during your aviation, environmental town halls as well, and I think it's a lot. It's going where the needs are greatest, and I think we're all committed to doing that, those of us who are up here today.
Right, and we work, I know we're not here to talk about it, but, we work together on the airport workers issue. The pay and benefits for workers at the airport has gone down dramatically, since my father was working there. We work to get the $15 minimum wage. Sea-Tac, first city in America with a $15 minimum wage. So it is a very, very big issue with tons of different pieces. And the important thing is make progress, move forward.
I appreciate your response, but there is a difference between equity and equality. You see, and so
I'm very much aware of that. Yes, that's why I said there's no such thing as perfect equality. Yeah.
well, no, I mean because actually even the two of you, because it does really speak more to you, and I'm sorry I came late. I don't know your name, but the thing is, I'm sorry, what?
Hamdi Mohamed.
Hamdi? Okay, Hamdi. But yeah, because, well, when you're talking equality, that's one thing everybody has equal opportunity. When you're talking equity, then basically you're looking for equal outcomes. And so you're going to take from this woman here and give it to me because I am less fortunate than she is. And so that's basically where I was trying to make the difference. So you said, I won't get into a broad discussion. I just want to point out that there's a difference between those two terms. The two of you were throwing out as if the two terms were interchangeable. But thank you.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very fair point. But what we're working to do is to basically improve as many people as possible. We're trying to avoid zero-sum games to the extent that we can. But you're right. Sometimes you do have to make those choices. So I think it's a decent point. Thank you.
Appreciate your responses.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I really appreciate seeing familiar faces. My name is Lydia Santadolfin, and I'm City Council member for the City of Federal Way. So it's more of an ask, not necessarily a question. The City of Federal Way is kind of outside of the realm where, all the grants and everything is being considered and sound isolation. So we actually met, the burglars here, we met with Commissioner Hasadala a couple of weeks ago. And we met at Nautilus Elementary School, and the school district shared with us that they have spent, I don't know how many millions, but to do the HVAC and installation, but they actually have a $700,000 maintenance fee, operations fee on an annual basis. So they used the COVID grants to do the clean air, but in the future, they don't know where that money's going to come from. Also, they're tearing down schools, building new ones, new facilities. So there's a lot of need, and so and our constituents keep telling us that they're really concerned about the sound and everything like Moines, Sea-Tac. And so, one question or my ask is, I would like to see Federal Way included in what's going on, and particularly the schools and the students because the impact is the same. And so we want to make sure that Federal is part of that. And also if you're interested in, I'm going to speak for Dave Berger here, Federal Way had the Quiet and Healthy Skies Task Force, and they had come up with a 70-page recommendation. And so if you guys haven't seen it, I'm hoping that maybe we can share that with you, but I think I want you to consider Federal Way as part of this process as we're moving forward. And thank you so much.
Here, Federal Way was part of the conversations when we started the work in the school. It was finally Federal Way. We reached out to Dale School District, and so what happened though is that Highline took the next level of having some classrooms using their federal dollars to put the purifiers in all classrooms. And one of the things that we learned along the way is that you can have new HVAC systems, but because of windows and doors and all those things, they're not particularly effective in reducing ultrafine particles in the classroom. So So I think there's been confusion that, oh, we just have to get a better HVAC system. That isn't what you need the airport community, right? You need these freestanding purifiers. So happy to help advocate, but again, Federal Way was part of the original research that happened along the time.
Thank you.
I'll add, Sheila was in the room. I just had coffee with Sheila the other day, and one of the things that she was advocating for was Federal Way of looking at the elementary schools in that area and made the point of talking about the diversity in those communities, and a lot of the kids that go to those schools tend to be low-income students and so forth, and wanting to see the port also be a part of that conversation. I'm glad you're talking to my colleagues, and I will join those efforts to have those discussions and see what are the ways that we can be supportive. We have the South King County fund. It's a $10 million that's supposed to support communities that are near the airport, and right now we are in the process of assessing those dollars and figuring out, do we do the same thing that we've done this last few years, or do we want to go beyond or make some changes around that? And so it's an opportunity to have further discussion and see how we can support Federal Way, but we have a lot of advocates out there.
Hey everyone, Joe Concho, Foster High School in Tukwila. Glad to be here. I teach the environmental science classes over at Foster High School, and there's a lot of climate anxiety shared amongst my students. But another thing that I see is that our students are ready to advocate for our community's needs. I have students from Allentown, which is a very polluted neighborhood in the city of Tukwila, and our students want to be heard. So I'm wondering to hear what opportunities do students from Foster High School have at the local, state, or federal level to make sure that their concerns, that their anxiety, and that their solutions are heard.
That's an excellent question. Thank you. I do work closely with what's happening from that area, and I do see council members from Priscilla up there next to you. Is the student voices are the most important. So I think as we're trying to expand funding for the programs we're talking about in schools, which Priscilla, Federal Way, Highline, they all should have as part of Kent, is that we could be organizing with the students helping to lead these efforts in Olympia, and it would be very powerful to teach us the same thing.
And I was at Highline High School yesterday, where their environmental club worked over the last 1 year to actually install a solar array on the new roof of the new Highline High School, which is now providing solar energy into their building. It seems to me that all of our regional school districts probably have environmental clubs in their high schools, and perhaps there's some kind of coordination or collaboration that could be developed on airport community high school environmental clubs. That would be terrific.
Thank you. I'm jumping in. Thank you. My back doesn't allow me to stand that long, so I appreciate that. My name is Steve Edmiston. I was name checked, so I guess in debates you get to say something after you're name checked, right? I want to say thanks to all four panelists here. I have personal reasons. First of all, Adam Smith, our congressman, did not run my father out of Thai High School as a student. I always have appreciated that. Hamdi Mohamed, you met with us recently, had a really vigorous discussion. That's great. And our two representatives here, our Representative Orwall and Senator Keiser, have been tremendous advocates for many, many years for our airport communities. I want to bring up three things, though. This is so important, at least to me, after all the years I've been involved, is that we recognize what we can do and that what we're choosing not to do. Choice is a big issue for us right now. And this really, there are three things that I think the Port of Seattle can do that it is choosing not to do. Okay? One, the SAM is the big secret about capacity. Everyone here says we're at capacity, right? But what the big secret is nobody in industry thinks we're at capacity. We're going to add 80,000 flights at Sea-Tac if the SAM is approved. 80,000 flights overhead is like the Avengers lifting up Baltimore Washington Airport. The Avengers, you've seen that movie. Lift up Baltimore, Washington, carry it to Seattle, set it back on Sea-Tac, and that's how many more flights we're going to get with the SAM. Choice one for the port is stop the SAM. choice by the port to go forward with the SAMP. There are no laws, there are no grant assurances. It is nothing but a choice. That's one thing we can do. Second thing, 72 million plus annual levy comes from us. It is unencumbered. It goes into the port's coffers. That should be going first to the communities impacted, not nibbling at the bottom of it. $1 million is nothing. The most important thing I think the port can do, believe the science. Don't attack the science, right? We've seen how that fails epically on a global scale when industry says, not enough science, not enough yet. Let's have more. There is a ton of science. Washington scientists, King County scientists, Seattle scientists all say, fix it now, we've got a problem. The only entity that says, I need more information is the Port of Seattle. Those are three things the port can change today. And how respond. You know, if you have something to say to those points, I'm sure this audience is ready to listen to what you have to say. Thank you.
Just had a long conversation. I could sit up here and talk about each one of those points until the end of this meeting. The thing that I will say, and I said to you before, is the SAMP is delayed right now. It's a whole process that we're looking at. There's no action being taken at this moment, and so I don't want to create false alarm in the community at this point. And if there are specific issues that you have with it, you're welcome to talk to us. And the FAA does play a big role in SAMP. They are a key component of the work that we're doing around that, and they're guiding the directions of it. And so if we go a different direction, it will be in partnership with them. But at this moment, I think what is really important is that there's no action being taken under SAMP. And when that time comes, we will be engaging with the community. So long as I'm on that commission, there will be a robust community engagement around SAMP. The tax levy dollars. There are a lot of funds that do go back out to the community through that tax levy dollars. Should the port do more? Yes. I've advocated for that during the last budget cycle. Can we do more? Should we look at doing more? I absolutely think. As a separately elected official, that is something that I've talked about. I talked about it with even sound installation. You could go back and hear me directly from the dais talking about what is the possibility of doing some of the sound installation work, looking at the tax levy dollars. I've even said we should, maybe if there's challenges, legal challenges around that, we'll put it out on the ballot. So I am exploring that idea, and I definitely do think that is some thoughts that I welcome. And as far as the science goes, the reality is, it's on the port's website. We all agree that we have a climate crisis today. We can all talk about the different pathways to addressing that crisis. We can sit up here and blame whose fault it is, what science is correct, what science is incorrect. What I'm interested in is in the solutions. What do we do at this moment? There was an individual who talked about foster high school students. I'm a millennial. At times I get mistaken for a Gen Z, depending on what kind of shoes I have on. So here's where my hair's tied back. But here's the reality. I share that frustration with our younger generation. I'm actually sick of hearing about who are we blaming? What does the science say? We want action, and I think as a young person, that is what I want to focus on. I'm tired of actually talking about who do we blame. We should all be working, especially from a government entity standpoint, philanthropy, business, on the solutions, correcting the wrongs that have been done. We've built this economy on fossil fuels. It's time that we change that, and that's what I am interested in.
Hi all. I want to do a little shout out. Adam Smith's birthday's coming up. It's the same. Well, it's the same day as this one, so they're practically twins.
Is important.
Really good comments, really good discussion. I really appreciate you guys coming today. A couple things. We've got to think in terms of basically short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. And we have to get really active on the short-term solutions, even like what Steve was talking about. One of the pieces that we've been working on is the air filtration systems. And those can't be minimized. They have a huge impact. You can cut the pollution by about 70% of those. I did a little bit of citizen research where I saw the pollution level outside the airport terminal, inside the airport terminal, and like say it was like a 22 for 2.5s. It's a 6 inside the airport. And so part of what we're wanting is the same kind of air quality that you're giving to passengers. We want that same kind of air quality in our homes and in our businesses. And on playgrounds. Actually on playgrounds, what's interesting is I'm talking to somebody in Mexico who they've come up with outside arrays of air filtration. And so that's something we're gonna... Trees. Well, trees, I'm sorry, but the amount of trees we would need is astronomical. I'm not against trees, believe me, but we have to get real-time solutions. My child can't wait 20 years, can't wait 50 years or whatever until we get another airport. We got children in crisis right now, and so we have to take fast action on that.
I do apologize, I have to go in a few minutes. We were supposed to go till 11, we're still going, so I will not try to interrupt the proceedings here, but I have to go in just a couple of minutes as we get through more and more questions and comments. Just want to let everybody know that.
Good morning, my name is Mike Hogue. I've been in Federal Way for 25 years now. I appreciate all the work that all of you are doing on this issue that is impacting our communities. And I appreciate the voices I'm hearing here that I better understand those issues myself. My question is around the expanding the capacity. Has there been any work in all of this? I haven't heard any today around using our rail systems as another alternative for some of that short-range capacity and probably a more efficient per mile on fuel if you fill those trains up.
We have not built a national rail system to the degree which every other developed country in the world has. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons for that. We have put some stuff into the transportation bill, but I don't think we should give up on it for exactly the reasons you just described. Much lower impact on the community, and something we can expand. And again, many of the trips that are taken are from here to Portland, from here to Spokane, and elsewhere. And if you had a better, more efficient, high-speed rail system, that would be a reasonable alternative that we just don't have in the way that most of Europe and China and Japan do. So I would urge us to build out that system and see that as an alternative. And with that, I do have something else I have to get to. So, but we will stay in touch on all these issues. My staff is here. Please let us know what else we can do to be helpful. And I really want to thank Hamdi, Tina, and Karen, all of whom have been incredibly engaged on this issue. Some for longer than others, but all with great passion and commitment, and they're terrific partners to work with, and I'll continue to do so. Thank you very much.
So
iron worker in the hallway 25 years ago, not from the store. Came to see how it's going. What do you want? I got some for start and roll the line. I love the next stuff. I have a lot of okay. Yeah, so I want to see that I'm finding it. Basically, it's very hard, right? I was the start, literally, we got a platform of but still, we don't need to have they need. We also want to have a base. Just in a moment. All right, if you're heading out to the exit, do so now. We're going to resume with questions here to respect the folks who have been standing here. And again, those side comments, if we could take those into the hall, it would be really appreciated.
I can also talk loud. So,
yeah, talk loud.
That's fine too. Hi, my name's Ryan Crompton. I live in Moines. I've worked at Boeing and at Aerotech and actually worked on the aviation and universal hydrogen programs, which you guys probably know about our hydrogen and battery electric airplanes. So know a fair amount about the aviation industry side of things. So anyway, I'm going to focus mostly on kind of practical stuff like that. So the electrical airplane stuff is definitely coming. I guarantee it, and I think it has a lot of benefits for all of us. It's going to be, obviously no tailpipe emissions locally and a lot quieter, but it's still probably, early 2030s until it shows up. And it will only be for, regional Q400 or E175 equivalent airplanes in the beginning. That said, like the state is doing right now with the ferries, it takes a lot of electrical infrastructure to be able to charge those batteries and charge them quickly. So I think, just one comment, the state and port probably probably need to be starting to think about how do they get with PSE to get large amounts of power, at the airport to facilitate that charging when that happens, so that can happen as quickly as possible. Another kind of thing, obviously, local generation helps. I know, in the past, solar in Western Washington has seemed kind of like a silly idea because it's so cloudy, but, in the last 5 years, solar panel efficiency has improved by, almost double what it was. And so, even not that efficient during our very long summer days when we have a lot of tourists and a lot of people coming in could help a lot. And the port has a lot of rooftop area on its buildings and in some of the surrounding port area owned land, as well as some of the local landfills that Adam was mentioning, are 2 large local landfills here. I don't know if that's something that the state could try to find some money for. That's in the East Coast, I know, starting to be a big thing of, hey, why don't we put solar panels on top of old landfills? They have no other purpose, but they're in local communities and can generate locally. So anyways, just a thought. I think the third runway restrictions have been actually somewhat successful. I live right under the runway and do feel like that has helped a little bit, but I think it could help more if it was more like 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. because a lot of us are trying to go to bed before midnight. So just maybe like a little bit of an extension on both sides would really make a big difference. The last thing I would say, and it's a shame that the representative has left, but that's okay. I think, in all of this, right, continuing to try to do any growth and be better is about, working better together as partners. And so I think, some of the things that I know are out there and that Boeing has done studies on is, and as you talked about earlier, when the airplanes have gotten a lot better at being quieter on takeoff. The engines are a lot quieter than they used to be on takeoff. But on landing, they're not very much different because a lot of the noise on landing is coming from the gear and from the flaps. But Boeing and other folks have done studies on, noise, effectively ways to clean up the airflow around the landing gear and around some of the other surfaces that are out to make them much quieter on landing. And a lot of that can be retrofitted to existing airplanes for not very much money. I mean, I'm sure the airlines would say it's a lot of money, but it's not really a lot of money for some plastic parts that go on top of these things. So I think that's an area where, where something could be done in the near term to help folks out in the communities. And I don't know if that's something that the FAA really has to go push or something that we can push, but I think that's an option. And at the same time, I know a lot of people here who have been pushing this for years. If the FAA would just be a little bit of a better partner, some of these approach plates for our landings and takeoffs could, route out over the water, a lot easier, or down over I-5, and, those are areas that already have a lot of disruption where the impact would be less. It doesn't go away, but it would be less, and these are things that, effectively can be done within a couple years if somebody would just do them. So, that's all I got.
Well, I want to say thank you. Thoughtful, very knowledgeable. If you want to be for coffee and start working on some of this, I'm all in. I've been thinking we have all these warehouses. Why do we have solar? We need more solar in our schools. I think that's important. I'm also supposed to go down to Yakima because they do want to talk about what they think the role could be. And again, as you're looking at the electric airplanes and hoppers from around the state, we have a capital budget. We have new climate change dollars. We have a lot of new investments coming in that can be doing creative things like you're mentioning. So thank you, and would love to work with you.
Sure.
Hello, Barbara McMichael here, local resident. I was able to walk here today, so I live directly under the approach to second runway. It was a house that my husband and I bought 25 years ago because it was affordable. And so here we are today. I actually grew up in the area, went to Madronish and Nuktai, went away for a while in my 20s and came back to take care of my aging parents. So I'm really committed to this community. I'd like to talk a little bit about adjacent impacts. A couple of years ago, I do all this community, activism stuff, and Dave Kaplan and I were writing back from a meeting after he was on the Moines City Council and he was Port of Seattle staff. And we were going across the bridge at 216th, and I was bemoaning the loss of the trees. And this was a couple of years ago. And he said, yeah, no, this was for the development of light rail, yay, and the 509 extension, boo. And much of that, the 509 extension really was in service to Sea-Tac, moving cargo and freight out and so on. He said that at that point, we had lost, and this is south of the airport, 30,000 trees, and they hadn't finished cutting trees. Now, I'm shaking now. I hear about high school teachers talking about climate anxiety. I'm feeling climate trauma. I have seen my community so devastated by this loss. And so I just think people talk about their kids and how, you know, it's going to be tough for them in 20 years. For someone who's grown up in this community, it's been horrifying to me. And it's not that I don't believe in our community. I love the people who are here. I love my neighbors. I just am really begging you. And I'm so glad that we have somebody from Sea-Tac on the Port Commission now. But I'm really begging you. When you talk about being radical, I applaud that. I don't think it means keeping the people from Thurston County out. I think what it means is we really do say a cap on the expansion of airport activities. Our electeds have to talk, our port electeds have to tell port staff enough is enough. And we really do, the gentleman who talked about rail, we really have to be talking about rail. And I probably said enough, but thanks for your time.
Before you leave, I just want to say thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Scott Chase. I'm from Federal Way, and not a lot of people from Federal Way. I want to thank Councilmember Seth Dawson for being here. All of the jet aircraft in and out of Sea-Tac go through Federal Way. Okay, so we need to be included. And over the years, we've grown significantly. Okay, we have 100,000 residents now in Federal Way. And we used to just be a little bedroom community in the forest, and that's not the case anymore. And over the years, recently with the gentrification of north of Seattle, our income levels have gone down south of the airport. Our education levels have gone down south of the airport. And Federal Way is the 5th most diverse city in the nation. And we need attention. We need to be included. I gave a couple pages that I printed off the website to Adam Smith on his way out. And on the port's website, it shows the graphics of the noise abatement procedures. They're all to the north. So north flow goes out the Duwamish Waterway during the day and headed to the west. North flow headed east has to go to 4,000 feet and clear the 520 bridge before they can turn east. So that's to go around Mercer Island. I heard decades ago that one of the port commissioners lived in Mercer Island. But the point here is that back in the day, when all of these noise abatement procedures were put in place, that didn't include us, you know. And so, can you imagine if all of the airplanes going in and out of Sea-Tac went over West Seattle? Because they don't. West Seattle is 100% protected from noise. I mean, this auditorium would be full of people from West Seattle. And so, but yet, if you look at those 3 maps on the Port of Seattle website, it just shows noise abatement procedures to the north. I mean, for example, at nighttime, they go up through the Duwamish Waterway and cannot cross, you know, the shoreline again to head east until they reach 10 nautical miles. If you go 10 nautical miles south of the airport, we're way past Federal Way. So this is the extraordinary measures that have been put into place to the north, and there's nothing to the south. If you look at that website, it shows 3 nautical miles, and that's it. and yet they all go in and out of Federal Way. So I say that it's time to open this back up again and renegotiate this thing. And the other thing that was proposed was, and what the other gentleman mentioned, was this proposal of flying out over Commencement Bay. I mean, you look at the procedures to the north where they're flying out of the Duwamish and they can't cross the shoreline. It doesn't make sense to take all of that aircraft into the residential cores of South King County and fly them around. But one other thing I'd like to say is that 10 years ago, there was an FAA representative, and we had a council meeting in Federal Way, and it was a packed house. Honestly, it's one of the most crowded council meetings I've ever seen. And we were described this continuous descent thing about sliding down a banister and gliding into the runway, and none of that happened. And so some of us that have contacted the port said that it's up to the pilots to decide how to approach, and so they fly around South King County at 3,000 feet. It never happened. And so far, all we have is talk, and you know, there's nothing written or in place to protect us. And the other thing is, you know, kind of the standing issue was that the third runway was promised to be for overflow, and now, it makes an extraordinary difference. If you look at, I mean, right in the runway use agreement that was signed in 2019, it says that the east runway and center runways will be used as arrival and departure runways. And then it also says the third runway will be used for arrivals. But they're not using during the day the runway 1 and 2 for arrivals and departures. It's just runway 3 now. And so to add all of this up, I mean, we are just the forgotten, and demographically, and we need to open it all back up and change all this, make it equitable. Thank you.
Thank you. Your remarks are right on the money. I worked really closely with, at the time, Representative Pelleggiati, who's now our wonderful treasurer, and he expanded the noise contours at the state level to recognize that. And it seemed like we had the older Part 150, and then they started next gen, and all the noise changed. And you know, I'm in the area where every 30 seconds there's a flight coming in from Federal Way down to Moines, and it's non-stop. And so there's a new Part 150 coming in, but all the programs were designed for other, when we had other flight patterns, and it's been an enormous amount of increased noise. And I think Federal Way, you are a big part of it, and I know you have a lot of champions in that area that we're going to include at the table.
Apparently it's this side of the room. I'm Dave Berger, and I want to thank Councilmember Sapadowski for being here. And the gentleman who just spoke, and you now know, you've already known that Federal Way, of course, is impacted with no mitigation. And that's really what we are looking for, have been for years. And last week, I think it was last week or week before, time flies, we had your colleague, Commissioner Hasakawa, come down and visit us, and we really appreciated that. And we know that your staff was trying to get you coordinated to come as well. We certainly invite you to come back in the fall when the teachers and students are back on the playground. I just wanted to kind of reiterate what was just said by Representative Orwall. The Pelleggiati bill does extend now 12 miles south of the threshold, and that was monumental. We really appreciated that advocacy when Mike was our representative, and you heard from people here, and I'm certainly not going to disagree. It would be great to have a cap right now on the airport capacity. Whether or not that's realistic is obviously up for debate by your commission once the EIS comes out on the expansion plan. But certainly we would hope, and Commissioner Hasagawa asked us, what's our city council strategy? we're very transparent about that. She mentioned the Quiet and Healthy Skies report. It's all in there in terms of what our council adopted strategy is dealing with not only the expansion plan, but its current impacts as well. Certainly we would hope that the Port Commission would take advantage of the state authority it now has to extend beyond the Part 150 parabola when it comes time to mitigate, if in fact that project's approved, which again, I'm not going to say we want it to be approved. I don't want it to be approved, but you know, the demand may very well grow beyond its current capacity. We understand that. I'm part of it. Many of the people here are part of it as well, that growing demand. So we hope, I'm not going to try to pin you down, the Commissioner, and ask you to take that position, but that's our expectation. We think that's the minimum that could be done, that should be done, and really the law requires be done. State law, SEPA, requires that impacts be mitigated, and we didn't get that on the third runway. We should have gotten it on the third runway, and we certainly hope that it happens this time if in fact the SAMP is approved. Second point I want to make very quickly, I had the opportunity in February to tour a manufacturing plant that's pretty unique in this country called Joby Aviation. It's on the central coast of California. You're smiling, so you know about it. I have seen the planes being constructed in the factory in Marina, California, electric planes. They are going to be filing for certification this year. I have evidence of that on my iPhone if anybody wants to look. I've seen them fly. They're 4-passenger, they go up to 150 miles. So it is in our future. And I'm personal friends with the manager at the Rainier Airport in Marina, California. If anybody who happens to be down on the central coast of California or plans to be any time in the near future, please contact me. I'm an elected official as well. You can reach me through the website of the South King Fire District. So I'll be happy to arrange that for you if you're there. You can tour the plant. You can see it for yourself. They fly every day. Actually without a pilot, although the FAA will require a pilot to be in the plane. So it'll be a 5-passenger plane. So I just wanted to add that kind of footnote. We talk about electric airplanes sort of as a, no pun intended, pie in the sky thing, but it's actually happening. There's major investments going on. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your comments. I just wanted to quickly say, I think that federal should be included in the work that we do. Figuring out how that works is I got to do some homework there and trying to understand where the gaps are. And the other thing about that makes federal way unique is a big focus area for me on the commission is workforce development as well. When you look at the people who actually work at the airport, the population, a lot of them come from federal way. There's a lot of issues with transportation as well. The bus is not running late, the light rail issues, all sorts of stuff that federal way community is taking on. And so I understand the unique needs that the federal way community has, and I would be happy to work with you on figuring out what is possible for us to address some of those concerns. And as far as capping the flights, that is not something that the commission has authority to do, and I know this because I've asked. It would take the FAA and Congress stepping into something like that. But as far as samples, like I said, there's no actions right now. There's a delay, and I think what's most important is as once those discussions come about and we start to talk about it, that we have a robust community engagement and that we're thoughtful during that process, and that is something I can commit to. So long as I'm on the commission, I will advocate for that.
Hi, my name is Ann Krager. I live in Redondo Beach. We have 2 lines over us every 2 minutes. Many of them from 500 years now. The bay amplifies it whether they are turning east or west. So I understand the immediate pollution. What I'd like to talk about is the long-term pollution, which is affecting everybody we know right now, or we don't know.
and everyone in the future whom they might have in their lives. That is our responsibility. And when the court says they cannot cap, they cannot discourage, they can discourage because they encourage. They encourage industry, they encourage new, they laud every time there's a new partner or a new flight. Ones who want to use Sea-Tac as a hub, as a 40% of them are changing flights only, not getting off and supporting or being tourists here, or family members, or other parts of their business. So that doesn't ring true, and there isn't enough power being put to support the community and our long-term goals. So when you talk about 50% of port-owned emissions, that would be 2 to 3% of the emissions that are coming out of Sea-Tac, coming into and out of Sea-Tac. That's 97 to 98% are the GHG emissions that are coming out of the tailpipes. And SAF, or so-called sustainable aviation fuel, is years down the pipe. It's as we are encouraging increasing flights, that this has no effect whatsoever. And the sustainable part is potentially, as Ursula said, not really sustainable. It's still a combustion engine. We still have all of these emissions that we are not taking care of, we are not taking responsibility for. Whether the flights are over our heads or someone else's heads, it doesn't matter. We're just digging our hole deeper, and I don't see that there's any action towards not only capping but limiting, but dialing back on where we are and where we have been. It isn't all about the profit for other people. It's about our health and welfare. The one thing that didn't get into the reauthorization bill is it shouldn't be a tax credit to for-profit industry on the backs of public taxpayers for their aviation fuel, their so-called biofuel development. It ought to be something that they are required to do, but since 10% or less of the public fly, and maybe only 2% are frequent flyers, this is absolutely inequitable that all of taxpayers have to support something that the for-profit should do. And thank you for hearing me.
Hi there. So, J.C. Harris, Des Moines. I hate to be that guy, but the one thing the airport operator has control over is saying when the inn is filled. It's actually in ANCA, the 1990 law. It's a one-page form that you send to the FAA administrator, and you say, we're filled up. And that's it. Now, you'll immediately, create a firestorm, but that's the one thing you can do. It's right there in the statute. So the only reason I bring, that wasn't what I was going to say, but there is nothing that's been discussed here today that was not discussed in 1975 with the Sea-Tac Communities Plan, except for the size of the particles, right? So when people say, we're doing everything and it's an emergency, yeah, not so much. We've all become complacent, and I apologize, because everybody works hard and so forth. But it's too slow. I want to thank Representative Orwall. This is what I really wanted to say. You did something marvelous this year with PISCA, and the first, basically you created one node of an air quality monitoring network. You as well, Senator. I'm sorry, I don't. I'm sorry, Representative Orwall. Your name is at the top of the thing, so apologize. But the scientists in 1975 wanted a network, okay, because they knew that that was the only way to get to regulatory authority. All right. Now you got the dough for that. You could get the dough for the other three, right, in a month. You could do it. It's like $1.5 million in the grand scheme of things. $1.5 million is nothing if this is a true emergency, right? Okay, you got PISCA on board, which I'm like, wow, that's like the break of the Soviet Union.
JC, just a Puget Sound Air Quality Association.
Yeah, and just one last thing. When you go to the AirGov or any air monitoring site around King County and you see all those little green dots and the stars. The stars are the regulatory, those are the agency monitors, those are the fixed site legit things, okay? And then you've got all the little green dots, which are the purple air things, right? And they're always green. And the thing that the public does not understand, green is good. It means that the air quality is good, even right next to the airport. It's good. Even on the worst day, it's good, you know, unless there's a wildfire, all right? And the reason is because we don't have a tricorder like on Star Trek. They only monitor the emissions from tailpipes from cars and trucks, okay? If we had the network, which you can do like in a month, right, then that map would not be all green. It would correctly represent the aviation emissions coming out. And until people can see, you know, until they can see it on that little graph, all right, every day, they're not going to do anything about it. Because every day you're going to see it and you're going to go, oh, they're green. Well, I guess everything's fine. And that's something that you can do in a practical way this year. I'm done.
Well, thank you. And thank you, JC. I appreciate that shout out. And one of the things that happened is that the Puget Sound Clean Air was going after an EPA grant, and EPA grants do not look at ultrafine particles. So we approached them and said, can you also look at ultrafine particles? And so they said, we don't have the equipment or the expertise, and so we got the funding to get them the equipment and have UW working with them. And so we started out with one as a starting point, but I think you're right. I think there's an opportunity to expand that. So appreciate that, appreciate your advocacy. We're going to do one more comment question, and then we'll wrap. Again, I want to say thank you for everyone for coming out.
Okay, better last, right? My name's Bob Leonard. We've had a great discussion tonight. Thank everybody for being here. We've discussed a great amount of solutions, short term, maybe some a little long term, but still the elephant in the room is I don't think anybody here really believes that by adding 19 more gates that you're going to improve life in these communities. 19 more gates equates to 200 more flights a day, and the people from Federal Way and everything, I don't think they want 200 more flights coming over them, and we live in Des Moines, so, you know, we've talked about a lot of things. They gave, the stimulus package gave $240 million to Sea-Tac, and it gave $16 million to Payne Field, and it gave no money to finding a second airport. So our priorities are totally backwards. I'm sorry, but Sea-Tac is a viable airport and doesn't need the $240 million. That $240 million would probably be better spent at Payne to get those other gates. So pain is a short-term solution. Pain's not a long-term solution. The runway's too short, they can't do anything. But we need to find a second airport. And we're dancing around everything here by talking about all these, air filtration is great, that's as long as we all stay inside. What if we want to go outside and go for a walk? We have air filtration in our home, I'm sure the kids do. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's what we've been working on is the siting of a greenfield site and expansion of other airports. And we as a community need all of our voices to keep pushing back and fighting for that. And the problem is all these other communities aren't impacted like we do, and they push us back. And it's time. It is time for us to stand up as a community and say no more. We need another site. And I think if we can push back on any expansion, then that puts us in a position where our state's going to need to take some action.
Do we need to start picketing the port?
Well, I would just go back about 30 years. There was a very active citizens group called CASE, Citizens Against Sea-Tac Expansion, CASE. They met every month, and they brought more and more people in every month. They did actually do some direct action, but they also filed a lawsuit and delayed the third runway for about 10 years or 12 years. So they did also have an impact on our lives and our communities. We don't have that level of ground activity, action by citizens. But I would ask all of the people who have an interest in this to consider citizen action. We represent you, but we need your leadership too, and your activity too. So please consider continuing to build a community of activists in the airport communities to push forward, to stop further expansion, and to protect our health and safety. That's how we can get there, but we do need community action and support as well.
Look up 350 Seattle Aviation. We have regular meetings on the second Tuesday of the month, and we're specifically trying to be agents of stay grounded. We don't believe that you should have an expansion of airports. And what you should do, well, at least my thinking is on it, is that you should take the originating and terminating flights here, split them in half, have some come into Seattle, some go to Yakima, and we have the shuttle flights that go in between the two locations. And we have even a Boeing rival in the Arlington area that's sold $4 billion already orders for their electric plane, which is flying. And hydrogen planes are on the way. Sweden has a 30-seater that is a hybrid. So if you worry about electric going down, they can ignite the combustion. But I do recommend 350 Seattle, and it's a site that pull down to. We have a number of different what we call community solutions groups, and we do a lot to do with the airport issues.
Well, thank you. I think we're going to do some closing comments. Do you have one more minute?
This is all well and good and talking and everything. Hamdi, you're the only one in this panel that has a vote on this, okay? We get help from everybody else, and we can all talk, but you're the one that gets to vote on expansion or not. We're encouraging expansion in the Puget Sound area if we make the airport bigger. Puget Sound area has 4.5 million people. If you run that out to 100 years, that equates to 18 million people if we keep growing at the same rate, and everybody knows that 18 million people can't live in this Puget Sound area. So we have to slow down the expansion sometime, and the Sea-Tac is a good place to start. One other question, 18% of that 240 million was earmarked for the communities, the local communities. Do you have any report on what's happened with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions, and I will include them in my closing comments. First, I just want to say thank you all for being here and for engaging with all of us. You know, this is what our democracy really does look like, is being able to have your elected officials engaging with constituents to come up with policy decisions. And it's not a perfect process, but it's a process that needs to happen. And I see it as an honor to be able to participate in this. In regards to expansion, I think what is important to know is that the airport right now is operating within its existing footprint. We do have a serious challenge that there are more people coming to Sea-Tac Airport all the time. And so there are serious security concerns, safety concerns that we are challenged with. It's not, there's not quick fixes that I can point to. I've served on the commission for a year and a half. I don't see those quick fixes. And the airport is also, the port is a special purpose government, right? And I'm not saying that to shift blame. I understand as an elected official, I have responsibilities and need to elevate your concerns and push for policies where I need to, but it's just being transparent about the decision-making process, right? We're a special purpose government. We are operating under regulations from the FAA, the EPA, the state, and so because of that, there's a lot of limitations, and I'm happy to explore any one of the ideas that were provided today and try to see if it's possible, if it's not possible, and give you a more in-depth answer. But I do want to be transparent about the challenges of having folks traveling to this region, it being a security concern, and there's nowhere really for the airport to expand, and I've said that we do need a second airport, and if I had to vote on that today, that's the vote that I would give. We're stuck, right? We're at capacity, and what we're doing at this moment is working within our footprint to make sure that we're not causing a safety concern for customers and the community in the area. So I'm happy to talk to you all. This should be one of many other aviation town halls that we engage in, and thank you for the opportunity to serve you all.
I also want to say thank you for coming out. I do believe in the trifecta, and the Partnership for Change is the community working with elected officials and our universities and our departments of health. And we do have a crisis. We're in a crisis. And I look forward to more conversations. My doors are always open. I want to do a couple of thank yous. If we have a lot of elected officials still in the audience, would they stand up so we can recognize them? I want to thank you for your service. I also want to thank Adam Smith and the staff that helped put this together. So thank you very much. And I want to thank my colleagues. It took a lot of courage to come here, right? I mean, we can have a big case. I look forward to many more conversations. And again, I want to thank Senator Keiser, who's been a champion long term. So thank you very much.
I also have many thanks for all of you for participating in this conversation today. This conversation does not end today. It should be ongoing. So let's continue to hear from each other. But I would advocate also for organizing at the local level for citizen activities regarding these issues. I want to tell you, Tina and I are co-conspirators down in Moines. We work together all the time and across the rotunda to try and get our way. We've been successful on several budget items, and on pieces of other policy. But to be honest, we are so outnumbered. I mean, everybody else doesn't want an airport. Not in my backyard, it's everybody else. And so when you're in a legislative body, votes count, and we don't have the votes to do this, to get another airport. It has to be done in a different way, and that's what I'm asking you to think about in terms of how do we relieve the pressure on our airport communities, and how do we look into the future 50 years for grandchildren, and whoever else is still around doing what we're doing. So anyway, just saying, thank you all. We have much work still to do. Appreciate your participation.